Tao. Recognize Tao from a previous one. Hey, good afternoon from California, but it's evening elsewhere. I welcome to Plan C Live and our session on informal education, and the impact on museums, science centers, and other organizations during COVID-19. I'm joined by a wonderful group here. In the middle, we have Joel Gordon, who actually I'm referencing my grid, which might not look anything like yours, but it does look like Hollywood squares here. Joel Gordon is from the Making and Tinkering Manager from the Scott Family Amazeum in Bentonville, Arkansas. We have Sherry Marshall, who's the president of the Science Museum of Oklahoma. We have two people from NYSCI, New York Hall of Science in Queens, New York. We have Samantha Tumalo and Sonia Bueno. Welcome to both of you. We have Ram Mosher from the Kid Museum in Bethesda, Maryland. We have Kurt Gabrielson, who's out on the West Coast here, Central California, Greenfield, California. And Kurt, we've worked with before on his books, Tinkering and More Tinkering, which the latter book he wrote in Timor, and it's called Tinkering in the Tropics or something like that. So it's quite interesting. And Katie Koffler from the Children's Museum in Pittsburgh. And she's the Associate Director of Art and Making. Thank you all for being here. I'm joined today, as usual, by Dorothy Jones-Davis, who's a co-host and from Nation of Makers. And Dorothy, you have something to tell us about.
Yeah, I just wanted to announce, I think everyone's heard it. I'm going to keep reiterating it until next week. Next week is our Capitol Hill Maker Faire on June 23rd and 24th. Usually it's in DC in the middle of the halls of Congress, but this year we're taking it virtual, which means more of you can participate. So our call for makers is out, and I will put all of these links into the chat and we'll be sharing them throughout the week. But the call for makers is still open, so there still is an opportunity to show and tell what you've been doing. We do have a focus this year on making in the time of COVID because, well, that's what we've been doing for the past few months. But certainly we're excited to showcase whatever you're making, so it doesn't have to be a COVID-related design. Again, it's 2 days. The first day we'll have a series of panels discussing the different types of ways that we've been working to make in this time of COVID. Also a panel on diversity and inclusion and our efforts as Nation of Makers to create a more inclusive Nation of Makers. And then the second day, it will be a showcase of all that you are doing across our wonderful country. And all of the showcases will be shared with our congressional representatives. So it'll be very similar to in the past where we're trying to engage with our congressional representatives. And if you don't know your representative, when you fill out the call for makers, we actually have a little handy dandy way for you to figure that out. And we also have, of course, free tickets for everyone who wants to attend. So the great thing about being in the Zoomiverse is that you can attend the Capitol Hill Maker Faire if you haven't. And so we encourage you to do so. So I'll be sticking everything down into the chat and we'll be sharing it again. But we really hope that you can make it next week and to celebrate with us the Capitol Hill Maker Faire. Great. And without further ado, we can go on to our panel, I think.
That's great. Thank you, Dorothy. Joel, let's start with you. Tell us what the last 100 days or so have been for you and your colleagues at the Amazeum, and more importantly, your community.
They've been lonely.
Yeah.
We've been closed for a few months. This is good timing, Dale, because we opened yesterday. So right now we're open to members only. We'll be opening to the public on Saturday. Of course, it's COVID, so we're being very responsible with what we're doing. It's sort of made us rethink how we're presenting a lot of what we do. And we're a hands-on children's museum. It's really been a long process for us. In a lot of ways, it's good that we've had the downtime, given us plenty of time to really think about how we're going to present ourselves in the age of COVID-19 and how we can best serve our patrons and our members. And yeah, it's making us reinvent the wheel a little in informal education.
Okay, thank you. Sherry, let's go to you. The Science Museum, Oklahoma. I keep looking at those backward S's in science up there. But at any rate.
Yeah, so we shut down March 15th and we opened back up on June 1st, which was kind of early. We had in Oklahoma, there was a big push that the whole state opened back up around May 1st. And the Chamber of Commerce, and the great thing is that we had a lot of support from the state, but the bad thing was we had a lot of support from the state to open up before really we think the community was ready, we were ready. So we did not open on May 1st when we were allowed to or encouraged to. We waited until June 1st. And that, I second what Joel said, that it was a really lonely time because you have a staff of people who feed off energy. And when you don't have that energy, we really have to sort of address just the physical and the mental well-being of staff in that time. And so when June 1st rolled around and we were ready to open our doors, our staff was excited and ready to be back because we had spent a lot of time trying to figure out what our museum was going to be in a post-COVID world. So
yeah, and we're not post-COVID.
Mm-hmm. Right. In a post-closed COVID to an open COVID.
Post shutdown or shelter in place.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sherry. Let me ask Kurt Gabrielson to tell us a bit about the Greenfield Community Workshop, which is kind of a model of science workshops that have been developed for a number of years in California. Welcome, Kurt.
Thank you, Dale. Yeah, it's a community science workshop. There's about 5 of these in California and a few others scattered across the US. It's a community space where kids and their families can come and look at our simple exhibits and our animals and specimens. And then we just have workbenches and a pile of tools and interesting junk, and they can do whatever they want. And we focus on, we call it low tech, high science. I mean, we do have drones and Raspberry Pis and computers if kids want to do that, but we also have drill presses and lathes and sanders and a welder, and kids can fix their bike with our marginal tools and learn all the really key things in life. And so we got a lot of programs that work with schools. We do field trips. We take kids from schools. And but the core program is the open door, open structure after school. And on Saturday, kids in the community just flows through the doors. And these things are all set up in communities of high need, low representation, low income. Our community here in Greenfield is about 95% Mexican American. They're the people that are picking the lettuce, and the 75% of the leafy greens from the United States come from this valley right here. And the people who are picking it are still picking it today. And we work with their kids. And it was a big shock when they stopped coming, and they did in early March. Everything stopped, and we sat and looked at each other for about an hour, and then we said, we gotta keep giving this stuff to the kids so they can keep making. And there's only one way to do that, and that's to put it all into little bags, little thousands and thousands of little bags of science. And so we put out, we ramped up to about 1,000 bags a week within 1 week of the closure. And we kept that up until now. We've put out around 24,000 little science kits into the community around here. And we got a great response, and we thought it was just a nice little push for the end of school and the summer. And now we see that it was just a pilot project, because we'll probably be continuing this on into the coming school year, only now coordinating with the schools.
Yeah.
And,
that's a great example. Did you want to show us a picture of your delivery vehicle there?
Right. When it first started, we were going into the schools where they were passing out free lunches But then when summer started, that kind of closed down. And so we got this little vehicle from the city, and we amped it up. And so now it's the science buggy. So we take it around and we blast on the speaker in the back. We blast the Bill Nye theme and They Might Be Giants, Science is Real. And we go out to all these neighborhoods once a week, and they can hear us coming, and they come out and get their little bags, and then then we shoo them away back into their houses where they're safe. And that's what we can do, and so that's what we've been doing.
That's great. That's a great example.
That's super awesome.
I love that picture there.
I know, it's one of my favorites. I love it.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Kurt. I want to go to Sonia Bueno, who's with NYSCI, and tell us about some of the work you've been doing.
So, the New York Hall of Science, or NYSCI for short, it's a hands-on science museum in Queens, New York. So we actually shut down mid-March, and it was a very rapid shutdown. And our direct community is of Corona, which actually was the epicenter of COVID cases. So Corona was impacted heavily and deeply. Lots of families got hit and, had a lot of repercussions from COVID. But when we shut down, it was shutting down all our community programs. So I'm part of the NYSCI Neighbors team, which is a community initiative in the museum where we're focusing of bringing creative STEM, making design, make play-based activities to our direct community of Corona. Now, Corona is mostly a diverse Latino communities. We have a lot of Ecuadorians, Dominican, Mexicans, and the families here are newcomers. So there are always newcomer families coming in all the time, and also first generation. And the focus for a lot of these families is academic. So for them, if you ask them what learning is, equals academic. So the traditional, academic school-based learning. So what NYSCI has been pushing to is this informal learning, especially hands-on, finding creative ways to solve problems with makerspace and design labs. So once COVID hit, we had to close our, free community hours. The kids just lost that connections of hands-on in interactive activities. And we got a lot of families who would call us and be like, my kid is crying at home because he wants to go to the museum and he doesn't understand why we're at home and we can't leave. And a lot of these kids are in apartment buildings, so they don't have a yard and they are not able to have space outside. So we had to think very quickly on our feet. And we had a Facebook group that was just for one specific program, but we opened it up to all our NYSCI neighbor families. We quickly went from 30 families to about 100 families within a week. And the first thing we wanted to do was provide them, families, especially the parents, resources so they can continue making at home. So we started this Friday series of a pre-recorded video that we posted out called NYSCI Neighbors Making at Home. And that's where Sam would come and show them how to do making activities using everyday materials. So it's been a wonderful response. That was just a starting point. We saw how awesome they love that, and they wanted to engage more, but not just with their families at home, but they wanted to engage with Sam, who they always asked for because they loved seeing her every day at NYSCI, because these families came Monday to Thursday every day at the museum. So we did a Zoom series. Once we knew our families were well established with the Zoom, how to use it, we did these Zoom series for about 6-7 weeks, and it was great. And for that, we actually found funding we moved things around. So we didn't have conferences anymore. So we moved that money to actually build a toolbox. So we used a container, and we gave them just the basic materials they would need for Sam to do all her activities.
That's great. Now, let's bring in Sam. But before I do, I was talking to Margaret last week. Margaret Honey is the executive director of NYSCI and some wonderful person. But NYSCI is closed till the end of the year. So you're going to be doing more of this that we're talking about, unlike others here who have reopened. So Samantha, tell us what you've been doing. Take off mute.
You're muted.
Every time. Yeah, like Sonia said, we're still closed to the public. We're going to be for quite some time. So we've had to shift all of our programs to a virtual space. And so far we've done that through both weekly videos, which is focused on making at home. So trying to kind of just get the fact across that there's meaning in objects that you already have and trying to encourage kids to think of new ways to use the things that they see every day. So we've been doing some upcycling activities, a lot of projects around recycled materials, projects that incorporate things that they already have, like their toys, like thinking of ways to display them and curate them, just getting them kind of like, yeah, we're stuck at home, but we can still create and use the spirit of the maker movement remotely. And at the same time, while that has been really awesome and really rewarding, and we were getting like feedback in the comments section, like photos and comments, it wasn't the same kind of community space as our after school program. Like we are used to seeing these kids every single day and they have a plan and they know what they want to make and they're comfortable using cool tools. And we wanted to try and recreate that too. So we started doing the Zoom workshops and we're able to make them little like maker kits that were dropped off at their homes. And that has kind of created a different platform for community engagement. We're able to see where they keep their art supplies at home. We've met their pets and it's interesting. It's different. It's a new world and we're still figuring it out, but it's been pretty exciting.
Thank you, Samantha. That's very interesting. I'm already getting good ideas here. Katie Koffler from Pittsburgh Children's Museum.
Hey, friends. I feel like our story is kind of similar to Nisai with the connection. We have 2 maker spaces in our museum. Our museum expanded last year. We have the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh, and then we also have Museum Lab, which is a museum for older kids. So we're really lucky. In one building, we have 2 pre-Ks, and in the Museum Lab, we also have a middle school. And we've been open for 1 year, and it was my baby. And then what happens, we spend all this time building this space, and what happens when the space and the campus goes away, and what are we left with? And I think what we found we were left with was really the core of what we found to be in making, which was human connection and communication. And common experience, I think, and there is no more common experience than what we're all experiencing right now. So we sort of we took some time, but we also hurried up, right? There was this urge to put something out into the community right away, and we tried these videos that were just like hands doing things, and it was very how-to. It wasn't how-to. It was very like, let's try it, but it was missing the community connection, I felt. So we took a break. We brought back our after school program. We brought that back virtually. And that's like really where the community was, I think, especially in Museum Lab. And the kids were missing their community and they were missing the teaching artists that they had. So we used that spirit and we sort of brought the spirit of putting together these thoughtfully curated boxes with the human interaction in Zoom. And we brought that to summer camp and we brought that to professional development as well. And I think what's really allowed us to do that, and I'm guessing we'll probably talk more about this later, is reallocating grant funding and moving grant funding around and rethinking how we are using our resources. And I think we've been really lucky to have accommodating and really gracious funders as well, who are just interested in like funding the core of the work that we're doing, which is this community and connection. So we're so excited about what's to come. And I think the Children's Museum is really looking at this as an opportunity to reimagine what we're doing and where we fit in our community and what the community needs from us and like listening to them. So it's been a really hard time and we really miss our families and our friends and the kids, but we still have that connection. And I think we're just excited to keep going.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. I want to come back to that community, really fostering the community side of this. This is one of the big challenges. Ram Mosher is from the Kid Museum in Bethesda, Maryland. Welcome, Ram.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you for inviting me. So Kid Museum is in Montgomery County, Maryland, just north of the District of Columbia, in a very partially affluent and partially not affluent county. We are a county about the size of Rhode Island. And Kid Museum is a makerspace and STEM learning center exclusively for children starting around kindergarten and all the way through middle school. And we have an apprentice program for high schoolers. And the shutdown happened fast. I mean, we had 100 and some odd students from a public school in one day, and the next day I was trying to figure out how to fit the laser cutter in my Kia Soul. I mean, and we literally and seeing if I could fit the 3D printer next to the laser cutter. And but we shut down when the county shut down. We are actually in a county library, and I think that was the 3rd week of March. We spent a couple, three weeks or so pivoting to live virtual teaching, and making as much PPE as we could with our feeble little 3D printers. But that really allowed us to keep our spirits up and feel like we were making a contribution while we were trying to figure out how to deliver our programming virtually. And we pivoted fast. I think 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks in, we were already offering a full slate of, I think, at least 6 hour to hour and a half long classes a week, all delivered live on Zoom, and delivered by our educators. We have a staff of professional maker educators, and it was hard, and it was exhausting. And of course, we haven't completely figured it out yet, but then when the school year ended and we were doing things, we weren't trying to replicate after school class. We weren't trying to replicate field trips, but we were doing our best to deliver our, project-based collaborative learning virtually. We made videos that we posted on YouTube and stuff like that, but the meat of what we were doing was live instruction on Zoom. And then summer camp rolled around, and we were like, summer camp on Zoom. How in the world are we going to do summer camp on Zoom? And we said, well, we have to do summer camp on Zoom. We don't have a choice. And so we started teaching. We spent, while we were delivering our maker-based programming in 1 hour slots or hour and a half slots, or 2 classes a week for 2 weeks to try and kind of give that after school program feel to it. We figured we put down the groundwork for teaching summer camp on Zoom, teaching maker-based learning on Zoom live. And for the last 5 weeks, we have been teaching 2 summer camps a week, 4 camps a week. It's the same programming twice a day, 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon. And so the educators are spending 6 hours a day on Zoom, which is teaching children for 6 hours a day on Zoom, which is exhausting. I mean, it is just thoroughly exhausting. I thought teaching kids in person was hard. But it is also so gratifying. It is we were ready for it to be a complete disaster, and it wasn't. And part of the reason for that is, we're good at our jobs. We try really hard. We're super passionate about this work. But the other thing is, these kids are just amazing. They get it. They get that it's not going to be the same as walking into the makerspace, and that I can't teach them how to make a skateboard this summer, right? But there's a lot of other things that we can do.
Yeah.
And we've been concentrating on the project-based maker learning that we can do on Zoom. So it's a lot of making stuff out of cardboard and duct tape. It is, I mean, a lot of making stuff out of cardboard and duct tape. I was the fabrication manager at Kid Museum. I had, I come from the fabrication world, and I don't have my tools with me, and it drives me crazy. I mean, I've got a few tools, but I don't have my CNC router. But you can make really cool stuff out of cardboard and duct tape, and kids can really get into coding. And part of our mission is really to serve all of Montgomery County. And we were fortunate enough that the school system sent any kid who needed to go home with a Chromebook and a hotspot, they got sent home with a Chromebook and a hotspot. And Verizon provided not to plug anybody, but the hotspots were provided, the computers were provided, and we kept chugging along. And so we've now done 5 weeks of summer camp. We're finishing up our 5th week of summer camp, and next Monday, we are pivoting to a summer program directly serving every single Title I school in Montgomery County.
Well, let's come back to that a little later, but thank you, Ram. That's very interesting. Dorothy?
Hey, can I ask a quick question of Ram?
Sure, yeah.
And that was when you were making that pivot from, you closed down and you realize you're going to have to make that pivot to virtual, were your educators at home and really figuring this out at home?
Yeah.
Because that speaks a lot to that drive of informal educators, that they're doing this at home and putting this together and making that pivot individually.
We spend a lot of time talking to each other on Zoom or Google Meet or whatever, but we spend a lot of time scrambling to set up maker spaces in our basements and our side rooms and our attics and whatever space we could find. Some of our educators are such passionate makers that they had 24-hour access to a maker space, but they also had one set up at home already. So yeah, it really does. We didn't know what else to do. Like, this is what we do. So what else are we gonna do except for set it up at home?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I think, one thing that what you were talking, it made me think of, I've been trying to, and partially maybe because I'm a glass half full kind of gal, I really have been trying to see the shine, like the light, at the end of the tunnel, or the silver lining, or what the opportunity has been. And I think there's a couple places where I see opportunity, as you all were talking, but I think while you were talking and some of the others, one opportunity I see is that we have an ability to teach true resourcefulness, that like technology is a thing, right? And it's nice to have all the shiny tools, but that the actual maker mindset that we're really trying to impart with the work that we do is not captured in a actual like tool, a specific tool. It's not the 3D printer that makes us makers, right? It's not the CAD, it's not the CNC, it's not the route, it's not even a hammer that makes us a maker, right? It's kind of the way we're right. Duct tape is part of our maker identity. We must have duct tape, but no, all jokes aside, it really isn't that. And I think that there's an opportunity there, right? A lot of the children that we often engage with really, some of them are, and a lot of you are dealing with populations that are underserved and doing tremendous work to level the playing field. But I think when you have disparity like we see, and I happen to be in the same county as Ram is, so my child does go to the school, the schools in that system, you do see this incredible disparity between the haves and the have-nots. And I think it's also an opportunity to have the haves understand that you don't need to have all the time to be an innovator, and that innovation can come from kids that may seem like they don't have very much. And sometimes that resourcefulness is even amplified. And so I think that that's one thing. I know I'm sort of saying a comment, but that's one thing that I see as an opportunity. One question I had actually for Kurt was around another opportunity that I saw, which is when you send things home, and actually many of you can speak to this because many of you did send things home to parents, especially parents that may have been under-resourced in the past. Did you see an increased engagement of the parents? Because I think sometimes, you send your kid to a place, right? And you're like, may the force be with you. You're learning great things. Yeah. I'm glad you're showing me this stuff. But when it comes to your own house, right? And you're now an educator forcibly because the schools have shut down and you're having to teach at home, and you're becoming the informal educator as a parent. you get more engaged. And I'm actually curious, or at least that's what my hypothesis is. So tell me if that's true.
Our experience was, in general, the parents are not there. They're out working. And a lot of the students would not even open the door. We'd leave the little bag outside the door. When we had a pilot project where we brought stuff to every single second grader. We got their names and addresses and tried to work through the teachers who had some connection to the families. And yeah, some parents are rising to the occasion, and others are sort of holding back, saying, look, we tried to get through those homework packets and they were a drag. And so now what the heck is this? And we're like, oh no, this is very different. This is going to be great. They're going to love it. And you know, we pumped it up, and there was a lot of sort of happy realization. But I think the older brothers and sisters were at least as important as the parents in making this stuff happen in any given house, which is great. We've always been highly in favor of multi-aged projects. Everybody gets more out of it that way. It's unfortunately, it doesn't happen in school that much. But I wanted to say also about the tools. That was one of the biggest challenges we had, to make all these projects to send home, and you can't be sure there's any tools at all in the houses. We realized the biggest lacking thing was a glue gun. So many great projects were just about to happen, and we realized, oh man, we're either going to have to glue 1,200 things together before we send it out, or find some other way to do it. And we actually looked at our community is not that big, and we calculated up what it would take to give every family in Greenfield a glue gun, because that makes all kinds of things possible. And we're still working on that. Actually, it would only cost about 50 grand. I don't know if anybody's listening that's got an extra 50 grand, but if everybody had a glue gun, that's hundreds of fabulous projects possible. But meanwhile, yeah, we look for resourcefulness and simpler ways to do it. A lot of duct tape we used as well. And masking tape.
Speaking of tape, I will say, like I've heard from other people, I mean, that was an assumption that a lot of us made too, is that households would have tape, right? And tape is not something that everybody has. You know, I think, you know, having an inventory in your head of what you think based on your own experience, you know, would be basic things that people have around their house. And you do the evaluation, and people, you know, are like, no, I don't even have Scotch tape. I have no tape in my house. And scissors were another thing that I think a lot of people, we heard from educators that say, you know, scissors, we thought people would have scissors and they didn't. So yeah, I think the work that you're doing is tremendous in trying to bridge that gap, you know, for things that are even considered low tech.
Yeah, we made videos to go with these bags. We made bilingual videos where we show them how to make the thing, and a little bit of science behind it, and a link to some other things on the web. Yeah. And in the few projects we did that required scissors, basically we sort of looked into the screen and said, kid, if you don't have scissors in your house, you got to get them, because this is going to open up a lot of things for you, and they're not that expensive, and you can do it. Get yourself a pair of scissors, because it's reality, I think.
Yeah. Sonia, could you talk a little bit about that, maybe address that same question of sort of, you know, kids being in a family, and whether the parents or older siblings are engaged, and how you see that happening?
In our community, we had a lot of stay-at-home moms, and these are not small families. It's families who have older, like maybe 4 or 5 sibling children in a household. So in our case, you know, they were stuck at home. So there were adults with children at home, and they wanted something to distract their kids that's not tech, right? Because the kids were already on Zoom or whatever other platform for their, you know, homework and for their schoolwork, and they didn't want their children to be playing on Fortnite or whatever games the children are playing now. And a lot of our families respond really well to manipulatives, anything that they're creating and doing. And a lot of the projects that we've done with Makerspace or our design lab, we're very thoughtful of what activities we're doing, because we based it on any experience or any kind of relation that the parents might have skill wise or from their environment when they were growing up. So we do a lot of weaving, we do a lot of, sewing, a lot of other stuff that Sam can elaborate on. So the parents are already intrigued because these are kind of weaving, which kids weave now. So these are like lost arts that they want, that they can bond with their children during that time. So we haven't had any issue of the kids logging on, because a part of us being a science center and a making forte, the purpose for us doing these Zooms or these at-home videos were to provide a social and emotional support for these kids. That was our number one priority. Just they would be like, oh, we're gonna do a Zoom with Sam and Sonia. Great. So they were like, they were already on, like, waiting by 3:30 on Wednesday to join us, because they were gonna see another face, another familiar face that wasn't their parents or their siblings or their teachers. So luckily, we didn't have any issues with that, of getting the children to hop on Zoom and join us. And the Friday pre-recorded videos, that was our parent engagement tool. Because we also made little kits with our Nice in the Community package that we send out. We did like friendship bracelet weavings or like cardboard art that we send out. We cut these little cardboard and we send out brass fasteners and yarn. And we knew, like, with those, sometimes, we get kits, it's like, here's a kit, and then no one really creates it. Sometimes it just stays there. So we knew if we did these pre-recorded videos, we were talking directly to the parents. So when Sam and I did this bilingually, we were talking to the parents of how to create a t-shirt, using a t-shirt and make it into a purse. And they love that. And then we would get examples how they did that, and they led that workshop with their children. So it wasn't like these videos were created that they're going to see with their children. They could have, but most of the time what happened is that these parents have Facebook, their children don't. So the parents will watch this Facebook video on their phone while they're just browsing on Facebook. They will see the activity, love what they did, and then they will go home and do it with their children. So it kind of brought the agency to the parent.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, let me ask a question that came in from Zali Mustafa, who's in the Zoom here. And the question is, how do you get the kids online? And let me just, one question might be the answer of Chromebooks and having access. That's one way you get them online. But I think, if they're getting a lot of Zoom through school, and it's almost the other question is getting them online enough to get them offline doing something. So I'd kind of like to just hear from any of you how you're balancing that and how you see the need for, it's not to just be entertaining content for them to consume, but actually getting them to do something, particularly, on their own.
Can I frame that maybe a little differently? Because I'm curious about everybody. I felt like, early on, because I stalk all of you online, by the way, I'm that guy. But I watched everybody sort of do this little evolution, immediately everybody, a lot of us are friends on Facebook and other social media. I saw you guys immediately start sharing projects that people could do. And we did that here as well. And then the next step was sort of, well, here's some projects that you can do with just things you have around your house. Ram spoke to that really well. Kurt spoke to that. And I know you guys, I know that NICI was doing it in Pittsburgh because I was watching you do it. So immediately it was like, what do we have at home? What can we encourage people to do? And then I started seeing the kits develop and how we were sharing these things on social media. So I know a lot of people, even if they didn't have Wi-Fi at home, almost everyone's got a phone. And we're all connecting on social media. So I started watching you guys really begin to ramp up that social media touch. And then the thing that was really cool, and to speak to what you were asking, Dale, I watched kids start posting their own videos.
Yeah.
And I thought that was amazing.
Yeah. No, that is amazing. If I might just say, we've also been following the same path with Family Maker Camp, trying to, almost do those same kind of things, provide projects for parents particular, but it comes back to Dorothy's point. We thought it was important to get parents engaged in, or engaging their kids in making, understand the value of it. So it's particularly if they weren't getting that from school, that this was another way to encourage that. So we're all and we're trying to figure this out. But I will say what you said, that given that we're all doing this, I keep wondering, how can we share this more broadly? And so, if Samantha's doing, figured out a kit, or Aram has figured out something, other places can do it. We've had a session in a Plan C Live on libraries. They're doing the same things with kits. They're doing videos, but if you're a kid, you can consume any of that, right? But I think there's some important pieces here. Katie, talk a little bit. I just want to go back to you on the community side. I really liked, I think the magic, we do talk about tools and materials and kits and things that's really good. But I think, someone said on one of this, problems, it's actually also developing relationships with people that are sustained. It's the trouble with YouTube is you can find, any video anywhere, but you don't have a relationship with that person, right? They don't talk to you. They don't give you feedback. How do we do more of that? Because that seems something that both kids want it with their peers, but also with adults and others.
So I think this happens on a multitude of levels. I think we start with the relationships that we have, and we're lucky enough to have after school programs that have really deep relationships. The kids come every day to Museum Lab to be with their teaching artist, Kay, and to be with other teaching artists and to be with each other. So we start with that community that I think that we already have. And
but let me ask you, is that opportunity still there?
So I think it's there, and I think we have the ability to grow it too.
Okay. But are you talking about kids coming to the lab physically? No.
Nope.
Okay.
And I think we're growing it a lot organically with families, right? We're talking about multi-level engagement at home with different age groups. One of my favorite things was that some of the youth identified that they were driving their parents crazy, and that it was important that they joined the after school to give their parents a break from them, which I loved. And we don't, like, going back to your last question, we actually don't see a lot of parent engagement with what we're doing. And it feels a little bit strange because we're used to intergenerational learning, but there's also just like some magic in being able to figure out how to communicate. So there's the possibility of working with these kids and growing relationships that we have, and bringing friends and family members in and meeting people that we wouldn't normally meet. And then I think there's also the community element, right? Who else is in your community that's doing what you're doing? And we can work with it, and we find gaps, and we are able to support each other. And that's another way. Pittsburgh's really lucky. We have a lot of amazing making organizations throughout the city. So we are also looking at how do we support these smaller organizations and keep them going in the work that they're going. So we're partnering with a lot of other organizations, and we're just beginning this project that we're doing, but working with a collective group of like-minded arts and making, and like-minded when I say we have a lot to learn from each other. But so I think there's a multitude of connections. I could talk about this forever. This is actually really important to the work that we do. But yeah, I think those connections are like top level important.
I really want to echo what Katie's saying. One of the things that I was most afraid of was that we would lose the community that we build in after school classes and in summer camp. I was terrified that was going to go away. And I found over the last, it's almost been 4 months, which is just bizarre to me, but there are two different ways that communities get built in the virtual space. One of them is extremely intentional, and you need to continue to be intentional about it. At Kid Museum, we have a whole framework of what we call Mind of a Maker skills that they're not technical skills. They're socio-emotional skills, and what people call soft skills, but I don't like that word because there's nothing soft about them. But so there's that intentionality. We open up every single day of camp with at least 15 minutes of just having a conversation with the kids. We open up we just throw a question at them. I mean, you know, desert island questions, who's your favorite inventor questions, all of that stuff. And it starts building this community. And then all of a sudden, this kid who was in that camp last week is in this camp with this other kid who was in that camp. And they start getting to know each other, and they start chatting with each other. We allow them to chat with each other. We monitor the chat. But next thing you know, they're saying, do you want to play Minecraft after camp? And they're trading emails. And so there's the intentionality of the educators, of the makers, of the people who are leading the program. But then there's just, these kids are starved to make new friends, right? I mean, that's what summer camp was all about, was making your summer camp friends. And the kids are doing it on their own. They figured out how to do it. And it's amazing. And it makes it feel so much better to be sitting in the same room all day, every day, and looking at people through a screen, because knowing that it's transferring, it's happening. I didn't think it was going to, but it's happening.
And then, like, I think the parents, I'm just one thing, you know, with NISI, what we do a lot is parent engagement focus. So we've created even a Zoom series, which it was based on an in-person, it's called Parent Ambassador. So where we focus like these workshops or these programming to parents, because parents, if they don't understand what making is or what, you know, what activities are they going to do, they might not want to engage as much. But if we focus, our target audience are the parents themselves, they start building that mind frame, and that's going to trickle down to their kids. So that's what we definitely have. We're doing that. We're starting in August, Parent Ambassador, Culture and STEM. So that's our Zoom series we'll be starting with them.
Love that. I want to, oh, sorry, Dale, I was going to grab in.
Read a comment, but go on.
Oh, no, go ahead, because it's not.
It's fine. It just, Tom Wiley writes that he's emailing a school district to see how many Chromebooks and hotspots were requested, so that he give him an idea on how many glue guns he will need to request. That's his way of scoping the problem there, Kurt.
I love that. I love that. I wanted to actually go over to Sherry, because we haven't heard from you as much, and I realize you're the only space that's actually physically open. And I kind of.
So is Joel's is open.
Oh, Joel's. Well, Joel's is newly open, but Sherry's
just newly.
A little more experience. I don't know how Joel's first day went, but Sherry's, I was, now, that you've been open for a bit, I guess, as you are open, are there some lessons learned or things that you're realizing? And have you been doing anything hybrid at all, virtually, because I imagine there probably are some guidelines as to how many people can be in the museum and what the extent of hands-on must be, and the cleaning. And I just am like, my mind is kind of going a little crazy thinking about what you must be going through and how it works. And maybe you can
yeah, and we're a huge facility as well. We're nearly 400,000 square feet.
Oh my gosh.
And so the social distancing part is not the challenge, because we've got plenty of space. And it's a learning process every single day. It's something new. I mean, we opened with the traditional restrictions that you see everywhere, which is limiting the number of people in. We started with online ticketing. We dropped that fairly quickly because we realized that our box office was very efficient and they could get people in, and we weren't going to have those crowds. An interesting thing is we opened without requiring masks, which was obviously a hot topic right now, because we were such a large facility and limiting of numbers. But seeing how people interact and this trust thing with us, it's a two-way street. People trust us to be the institution that they can feel safe in, but we also trust them to act safely once they're in here. And that social distancing thing was really, really challenging. So we actually started requiring masks on July 1st. And so it is a learning process every single day. And we are looking at what our program, because we started with our summer camps. We had in-person summer camps with kids. And we looked at what a virtual one would look like as well. Fortunately, we had brand new school sized classes. I mean, these classrooms are huge because, again, we have lots of space. And we could put one kid per table. So each kid had a 6-foot table and their own things of supplies. So we had a lot of resources, but we're also finding that the community is really not ready to come back yet.
I was wondering about that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's our numbers are spiking in Oklahoma. Our governor tested positive on Wednesday. It's something that a lot of families are really not ready to get back out, no matter how safe an environment we can provide.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them at all. So we are looking at that hybrid with the kits going out. We find that we have to really leverage what we're good at. And that's what's so wonderful as an informal education institution, is that we have so many fewer restraints than a school system. And we don't have that restraints of subject matter, because everything, the world is our subject matter. And so we can use the things that the kids might not get in school to do those special Zoom sessions, or to do those kit boxes that go out, that open up those doors and allow them. And that's what making's about, is giving them those opportunities.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we are hybridizing that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let me ask you, anyone, this question here is just, have schools reached out to you to talk about the fall, and whether it's to continue after school programming in some fashion, or to even supplement what they're doing, because it's not just about like the school day kind of thing, but schools don't have the resources. They're not organized necessarily. They're not experienced doing this. This is all new. A lot of confusion out there. Just, what's the relationship with schools that you might be having?
I do want to kind of continue with that, because that's one of the things that we are good at is with institutions, is helping the teachers reach out, because now throughout the summer, we're working on these things, and now the teachers are going to have to bring it into the classrooms.
Right.
And so when we talk about our community that we're working with, in addition to the families and the kids, kind of like what Katie was speaking to, we're working with other museums, the libraries, and the school teachers on how to work this information out there.
Yeah.
It's a bigger community.
Yeah. Rob?
Yeah, well, at Kid Museum, we've had a standing relationship with Montgomery County Public Schools. We have for years been delivering maker-based programming in after-school programs at schools. But the big thing that we're doing, and there has definitely been an accessibility issue in both in the real world, as we call it, and the virtual world. For children from underserved communities, there's been an accessibility issue, a huge one, really. But a lot of what we've been able to provide is field trips for public school students, and then our educators going to public schools and delivering programming. And now that we're doing everything virtually, we figured out how to pivot to Montgomery County is doing virtual summertime enrichment, learning enrichment, whatever you want, ELO STEP or whatever acronym it's given. I can't remember them all. But we are starting, like I said, starting on Monday, we are a major component of 3 days a week for every single student in a Title I, third, fourth, and fifth grade in Montgomery County. Every single Title I school student in those grades had the opportunity to sign up for summer school, for whatever you want to call it, maker-based, project-based learning that is delivered both by the public school teachers, which we gave professional development to, and by Kid Museum educators. And I don't know what that's going to look like in the fall, but I imagine that the trend that we're seeing in this region is that we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I don't want to say anything that's going to get me into trouble, but we don't know what's going to happen. I think one local school district just announced that they're going virtual until January. I don't remember which one it was. But I imagine that there will be a scramble, and since we have this ongoing relationship with the school system, that we will be able to provide really meaningful programming to the underserved community that should have been getting all of this programming all along.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Hey, Kurt, could you weigh in? How are you? Do you think you can work with the schools or help them out?
We also have a very close relationship with the schools here in Greenfield, as well as the 4 cities north and south of here in the valley. And they're watching the numbers go up. Our numbers are going right up here in Monterey County. And I think they're right on the cusp of deciding to stay home until the numbers go down. And when they do, then we'll be ready with our kits. And we have confidence that they'll come to us because they know they need quality science education. The big test came out last year, and the results were not that encouraging. It was around 13% of our students were at or above expected levels. And so they need to learn this stuff in a meaningful way, and they know that we're the resource that can do that. So we're hoping, and it'll be better connecting back to both the issues of the parents and the issues of the tools. If we can get in and work with, for example, all the 5th graders of this district, then we can design this set of projects that relates directly to the standards. And then we can also give the tools required for that. And if they're expensive, we could even loan them like a Chromebook and then get them back. And then we give a little PD, maybe Zoom PD to the teachers, and then they're up to speed on how to do this, and they're getting a benefit as well to learn how to do this in the future, teaching with real interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So that's our plan.
That's great.
So,
Samantha, any or Sonia, debating who's best from NYSCI's point of view, but do you think you will be working with schools and other community organizations?
Yeah, sure. I can answer that. So we have a network. It's called our NYSCI Neighbors Network, where we partner with about 20 local schools. So we definitely can always, talk with their parent coordinators and their principals and see how we can partner with them. Right now, we are partnering up with our District 24, which is the district where Corona schools are located. And District 24 is actually the most overcrowded district in the whole New York City school system. So we're actually talking to their superintendent and figuring out how we can partner with them. So it's like putting up videos or stuff on their website. If it's talking to parent coordinators, I know our director joined the parent coordinator group, Facebook group of this largest school in our system. So it's like, can we do residencies with them there and families? So are we doing a Zoom series just with these schools? So it's kind of taking what Sam and I used to do at schools, makerspace residencies, but now virtually. But there's ways that we're trying to definitely work it out.
Great, thank you.
Very cool. So one of the things that I'm realizing, and I realize this on all the calls, we're doing so many great things to change to move the needle and do a lot of things, as a lot of us have said, that are things that should have already been done, right? Like we're like, there's a need that hasn't been filled, that all of your organizations are working to fill. That is the, sort of gulf that's happening within traditional sort of, your formal education systems. That's why informal education exists, and that's why it's so great. And so I wonder, how much of this is going to persist after? And I'm really excited to see the post-COVID world and whether or not we're able to kind of keep things going along. And I guess my last question is a question that was sort of brought up in, I can't remember whose comment. It might have been Katie's, but it might have been Sonia. I can't remember who said it, but it was around funding. And just, obviously a lot of your spaces are closed and you are not getting revenue in. And even for the ones that are open, as Sherry mentioned, people are not coming back in droves, as, possibly they should not because of the health considerations. But with all of that, I know some of you have said that you've repurposed funds, but I wonder, are there other ways that you guys are seeing funding come in? Are there other opportunities? And it's fine to do what Kurt did and just make a cheap plug here on this show right now and say, we could use more funding, because I think it is something that I think we can see through this, that informal educators are doing so much to, again, fill that chasm. So anyway, just would love to hear some closing comments from whoever wants to talk about them around sort of funding and how you sort of see things going towards the future. I know I gave you a lot and we only have a couple minutes, but go ahead, have it.
We can go over. That's fine. Anybody?
We, for the first time as maker educators, were asked to be actively involved in spreading the word about fundraising campaigns, because our leadership at Kid Museum realized that it was going to take a lot more, and that there was no big fundraising parties happening or anything like that. So we started a campaign. I don't remember the details of it or anything, but we started a campaign, and all of us hopped on LinkedIn and Facebook and all of our social media networks and just reached out to the widest community we possibly could and asked for, donations, Bernie Sanders style. You give us $5, give us $10, whatever you can. We're fortunate in where we're located that we've got a lot of heavy hitters around with deep pockets. But we also got a lot of donations from small donors, and it felt really good to be a part of it. And, Dorothy, talking about silver linings, maybe if we're lucky, the value of what we are presenting to the underserved communities around the country will finally be recognized to a greater extent, because formal learning has been compromised so heavily.
That's a great point.
I think that's definitely something that could happen, and I hope it does. I hope people are finally recognizing that. Does anyone else have any?
Yeah, Kurt, how are you funded?
We got about a third of our funding from donors, foundations, third from the city, municipality, and a third
that's
from
nice.
the school district contracts, basically.
Okay.
And all three of those should continue at some level. So it keeps us from falling over completely if one of them falls out. But we found our donors. A couple of them stepped up, ramped it up, because we're using a lot more materials now, and we've also found ways to do it cheaper, even cheaper. One of my colleagues is like, if we don't have enough money, we can do it even cheaper. We can use junk, we can use straight just garbage, and we can make anything, and that's great. That's what we can do.
There might be a maker there.
You do have to pay. It's nice to pay your staff as well, though. So
yeah.
We're hoping the funders, the donors keep on going.
Yeah, Sherry, how about you?
Sorry, I was on mute. So it's a little different than when Rob was talking about, because we get no city or state funding. We don't have people coming in the doors, and so the fundraising is a very real reality. It's plus a lot of our big donors in Oklahoma are oil and gas, and that industry is folding in on itself right now. So when we look at the pivots and the changes that we have to make, we're looking at that in our fundraising strategies as well, because most of our money is for salaries for our staff that's on our floor every day working with our public. We are a very lean machine with that, and it's easy to get money for programs. It's hard to get money for electricity, and it's something that we're having to be a little more creative with in our fundraising, because per square mile, we have one of the highest nonprofit per donor ratio. We've got a lot of nonprofits in Oklahoma, and a lot of our regular donors have, as much as they support us, there's a greater need now for the food bank that has come up, and they're diverting a lot of their funds towards that. And we've put a capital campaign on hold because of this.
Yeah.
But it's not all gloom and doom, because there are other corporations that are flourishing during this time that are stepping up and will hopefully fill that gap.
Yeah. Joel, how about you guys? You're in the hometown of Walmart, so they're one of those places that's doing pretty well, I guess.
We have an amazing group of supporters. We have a really remarkable community. You got to visit. You saw what we have here, and that's really where we're lucky, because you can say Walmart, but the fact is those folks live here. This is their city, and a lot of our support comes from individuals. We have just an incredible group of partners, and they have been remarkably supportive through this whole thing. We're lucky to have really wonderful board of directors that stepped right up and said, absolutely, you guys are vital. We have got to keep this machine rolling. So yeah, but it's made us look at things like grants that in a different way. You know, a lot of us are we're very reliant on grants when it comes to the programs that we really want to bring into the community. And yes, we are the home of Walmart, but this region of Northwest Arkansas, Southern Missouri, we're neighbors with Sherry in Oklahoma. She's only a couple of hours away. There's a lot, a real diversity of economic range. And we have a lot of folks who just don't have access to facilities like this in their own communities. And we have to do a lot of outreach, and outreach is expensive. Keeping the staff in place, keeping the materials in place, and now doing it virtually. But we have a really broad program called Making Spaces. So we're developing maker spaces in schools with a lot of other museums and facilities around the country. So helping to support that professional development, to bring these opportunities to the students remotely now has become an even bigger focus for us. And those are things that we were invested in before, but now we're ramping it up. So it's going to have to be grant funded. It's going to have to be a lot of folks shaking hands and stepping up. And we're seeing that all over the country, and we're lucky to have that. But like Sherry was saying, the point is there are a lot of not-for-profits that are out there. There are sort of hierarchies of immediate need, and I think the focus right now is turning to the kids and education again, because it's where all of us parents have our heads right now. My 13-year-old, we're sort of anxious to see how school's going to go this year, and I think everyone's sort of beginning to think about that again. And I know that's going to make a difference for all of us, because everyone's turning their focus a little bit more to that again.
Yeah, Katie, if I go to you, Pittsburgh, at least from my experience, what I know is a lot of the educational and cultural institutions collaborate quite a bit. There's a lot of collaboration from the philanthropic networks in Pittsburgh, but I know Jane is very good at sort of getting funding when she knows that she needs to do something. But you mentioned a little bit earlier of moving grant money around and even changing the expectations around funders. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure. I mean, we have a amazing development department that really understands what we do and the value of making, and can speak to that. And I think that they're so valuable in getting us the right funders. We also have a really generous group of funders that we work with, and Pittsburgh is really interconnected. I will say that us being closed, though, is very hard, right? The hundreds of thousands of people that we normally see in the door, there's no revenue for that. And I feel like I also have to acknowledge that, we've lost a lot of staff over this time, and that's been really hard, like personally, professionally, and for the institution. There's so much value in having so many voices, and so looking to our community for more of those voices is really important, and I think that some of our grant funding is going to allow us to do that. So really rethinking where grants go, how they're getting spent, and being honest and open with our funders about how the money is going to be spent, and then writing grants for the new reality. We just wrote one and received one for hopefully half of the year is virtual for workshops on weekends, and then hopefully half of the other part of the year is in person. But we wrote a contingency plan for that. So I'm just hoping that some of our dreams come true, and that our funders continue to be so flexible with us, as we don't know what's coming up next.
Yeah. Thank you, Katie. Samantha or Sonia, or both of you. One of the interesting things about NYSCI is that, in one hand, it's a science museum for New York City, but it really, its backyard, its neighborhood is Corona, is Queens, and it's such a fascinating, unique area, you know, and has very different needs than what we tend to think of usual New York needs. So in some ways, how do you get more grants or other things to serve that neighborhood, that community, because they're you know, the need is right there and you can see it pretty clearly.
Yeah, sure. So I don't deal much with the grants, and including that's all my director and my vice president. But the thing is, with our community initiative, Nice Eye Neighbors, all our work is grant funded, so we don't really do much with revenue. And right now, since Nice Eye is actually closed until spring of 2021, there is going to be no revenue coming in. So right now, I guess it's kind of now is a time where a lot of the grants that we're writing or any kind of programming we're going to do is the target's going to be the community. So that's kind of in a good way that kind of the silver lining of all this is that what we have to do is focusing on this community because there's no one else coming in right now. And we've in New York City, we've seen some grants, and we applied for one grant. I think it's an IMLS grant with Makerspace. Based on this Zoom series that we're doing, but we're adding kind of a more concentrated curriculum about circuitry and, how to do this work. So, there's a lot more opportunities to have grown from there.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Samantha, do you want to add anything?
No, just waiting for that to hear back. So.
Okay, good. Hey, well, listen, we'll wrap here. Let me just make this point that I think in some ways, informal education as a sector has always embraced the community, not just itself or not just the system. And sometimes the school systems are inward facing, and I think informal educators tend to be more outward, making those connections. And I think one of the things we've learned about the maker community's response to COVID-19 was the value of building networks, using people. And I'd love to stay in touch with all of you and learn. I think if we could share more, the ideas, the Zoom sessions, the kit recipes, I'm going to be writing about some of this. I may ping you for more ideas, but even ways to get funding here, working together, working across the community to solve for the problems from COVID-19, I think is something that can be really positive. So thanks again, really wonderful. Appreciate all the work you're doing. Thanks for being here and sharing with more people. Good luck to you and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And Capitol Hill Maker Faire next week.
Yes, next week, Capitol Hill Maker Faire. And I just want to say thank you again, because our children are our most, I'm a parent, and I think many of you are as well. And children are really our most important, valuable asset we have, our future, right?
Yeah.
So I think, the work that you're doing is tremendous, and all of your efforts are so greatly appreciated by parents, certainly, even if they don't say it, but the entire community, because really these are going to be the problem solvers of the future, and you're helping giving them the tools to do that, even in low resources, which is actually even more important, right?
Yeah.
Because we may not always have a well-resourced future depending on how the world goes. So thank you, and thank you for your time tonight. I know you guys are all so busy, so we really appreciate hearing from you and want to stay in touch. So thank you.